Hi, if you're a Christian, today I want to talk to you about truth and authenticity. Now, authenticity is an aspect that a good religion could lack a bit without completely voiding itself. I'm sure that most of you wouldn't disagree that wearing sandals and robes and even the exact pronunciation of archaic terms don't affect the power that God has placed in His instructions to change lives. However, when your lack of authenticity is due to the deliberate corruption of your religion's foundation, then as King Solomon put it, friends, you're just chasing after the wind. My friends, anyone with honest eyes can see that Christianity is not what it claims to be, which is what? A valid gateway to the God of Israel. Today I want to try to prove how the world's largest monotheistic religion is just a blend of the world's pagan religions compressed into what we call Christianity today. And I'm going to explain why you can today find truth and authenticity just as many others have done. So, before we begin, we have to ground ourselves in reality. Friends, no belief system nowadays is an exact copy of what was practiced in biblical Israel. But the prize goes to the one that comes the closest. To begin, we have to understand what Christians and Jews believe when it comes to the Bible. My friends, Jews believe in what the Christians call the Old Testament, or what Jews call the Tanakh, which is an acronym for the books contained within it, which is Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. And Christians also believe in the Old Testament alongside the New Testament, which I don't have to tell you that Jews do not believe in. And as students of theology, we have to put biblical historical events, both Christian and Jewish, in their proper timeline to be able to determine each movement's biblical authenticity. First, we have to understand that God's first scriptural revelation to mankind was the Torah, which is what is contained in the 5 books of Moses. This is what Jews refer to as God's instruction manual for humanity. Why? Because it contains within it all the do's and don'ts that the Creator has revealed to us in order for us to be able to enjoy life and His creation in a sanctified manner. However, before we can understand how great and essential the Torah is, we need to understand why God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. It is traditionally believed that God first chose Abram, but if you follow the narrative carefully, you'll become convinced that after all the tests the Creator put Abraham through, it is really Abraham doing the choosing and God rather doing the appointing. In other words, our father Abraham first chose God, and then God appointed Abraham and his spiritual descendants to be His mouthpiece to the world. My friends, the Almighty equipped the Hebrews for this mission by giving them His holy instructions on Mount Sinai for the sole purpose of spreading ethical monotheism to the ends of the earth, to ultimately physically elevate this world to what we call the Messianic age, the age of true peace. He then gave the Israelites the land of Israel because at that time it was the center of the world. It was where the north met the south and the east met the west, so that through it they could truly be a light unto the nations. And even though today we see an irreligious entity occupying the Holy Land, we know that it only belongs to God's appointed people, which does not include atheists calling themselves Jews. So, as I always teach, the Jews are not the chosen people, but rather the appointed people, appointed with the sacred mission I just explained. A people not united by blood, but rather only belief. And don't let others fool you. There's no such thing as a secular Jew. Why? Because once a Jew forfeits his mission, he also forfeits his title. This is why we bless God in the morning with Shiloh Asani Goy, that God did not make us a Gentile. The rabbis teach, why don't we bless God for making me a Jew? Why? Because no one is made a Jew, but rather becomes a Jew. So in other words, you may not be a Goy, but if you're not a fearer of heaven, you are not a Jew. This is also brought down in the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam. But let me not get sidetracked. Anyways, this is Judaism. Now, Christianity also reveres the first 5 books of Moses, but in a different manner. Christians believe that the first 5 books of Moses are important because it gave the opportunity to lay down the unapproachable, unlivable moral instructions, or how they call it, cursed law of Moses. Friends, an unlivable law? Do you understand that this is the same law that it states in Deuteronomy 4:6? That if we observe them carefully, this will show our wisdom and understanding to all nations who will hear about these decrees and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. So then by definition, if we toss out God's instructions, we toss out the only thing that makes us exceptional in this world. Friends, this is the same law that King David stated was a lamp unto his feet and a light unto his path. The same law the psalmist also said that if a man keeps it, he would be like a tree planted by the rivers of water. But honestly, what's the other option? Well, Christians teach that we should follow our hearts and be led by a spirit. Friends, there is nothing exceptional about that. No law, no standards. Clear so far? Another thing that I know it's hard for Jews to comprehend, and I'm sure that Christians must struggle with the same idea, is how can the God of the New Testament be the same God of the Old? But regardless, the first 5 books of Moses are also the foundation of Christian theology. Why? Because according to the New Testament, it set down the main obstacle for Jesus to free humanity from. In the New Testament, it is called the curse of the law. In other words, because God's holy commandments laid down the basis for everything that is good and bad in this world, according to Christianity, as long as humanity is not able to keep God's commandments perfectly, they place themselves in the position to be judged by a righteous God. A judgment that, according to Christians, is always in eternity in hell. Christians also believe that because God set in place animal sacrifices as a way of atonement for sin, that means that the only way to do away with sacrifices and sin once and for all would be to offer the ultimate sacrifice. Enter Jesus. Still with me? So this belief gives Jesus the platform to become the Messiah and liberator of humanity, setting captives free by his sacrificial death on the cross. Now, you must understand that these ideas were written after the death of Jesus. And actually, this is one of the main reasons that early Jews didn't take warmly to the followers of Jesus and their message. And these ideas were later compiled and canonized by Christians into what is known today as the New Testament. So, I think this is enough basic info to expose the deception. Now, I'm going to be painting with a broad brush when describing Christianity, even though I know there are hundreds of Christian denominations all claiming that stake for truth. If anything, this alone should be enough reason to write them off as confused imposters. However, what I have to say will be applicable to Protestants, Catholics, Messianics, and Nazarene Christians. So, as I said earlier, Christians accept the New Testament along with what they call the Old Testament as divinely inspired works. But the main problem that many Christians have is that they erroneously view the Old Testament with New Testament glasses instead of the other way around. Why the other way around? Well, the Old Testament has to validate the New. Why? Because it is the New Testament that claims to be a fulfillment of the Old, not the other way around.